The GOP had plenty of checks on Biden's Ukraine visit, and it's far worse than partisanship. And the Republicans really want Russia to win. Now, far right Republicans won't come right out in support of Putin, but yet they agree with his anti-democratic agenda. Now, Now, to most people, both at home and abroad, the purpose of President Biden's recent trip to Ukraine is not mysterious, but the United States would like the nation to prevail in its war against Russia's invading army, and this show of support is valuable for moralizing Ukraine supporters while demoralizing the Russian dictator President Vladimir Putin. The far-right Republicans, on the other hand, tied themselves into knots in trying to diss Biden without coming right out and saying that they want Ukraine to lose. Now, some like the American Nazi supporters of World War II, tried to package their stance as mere isolationism. The representative pedophile Matt Gaetz of Florida, for instance, exploited the Ohio train wreck catastrophe to argue Biden is ditching America for Ukraine. That's not exactly what happened, but you know. Others, like Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, went full incoherence, raving, it's becoming more like a U.S.-China war through the Ukraine-Russia war, basically. And some went for pure race baiting, such as Representative Greg Murphy yelling about the war zone Biden created at our southern border, and there is no war zone at the southern border. In reality, the refugee crisis at the U.S.-Mexican border was created by Donald Trump's anti-immigration policies that Biden has been prevented from fixing by the GOP-controlled Supreme Court. Now, perhaps the biggest show of the pretzel logic came courtesy of Florida's governor Ron DeSantis, who tried to leverage the past year's success against Russia as evidence that the U.S. should drop the support for Ukraine, which they won't. I think they've shown themselves to be a third-rate military power instead of Russia and foe, as if that justified rolling over and letting Putin take Ukraine. And there's temptation to see this rhetoric as mindless partisanship as nothing more than a reflex of right-wing tendency to dismiss everything Biden says or does as wrong. That's certainly how former GOP congressman and current MSNBC host Joe Scarborough had reacted, arguing that they hate the American president so much that they're willing to provide aid and comfort to the Russian cause. Um, Now, even though the morning Joe host does not have it backwards, sure these people would oppose puppies and rainbows if Biden said he liked those things. But there's a deeper reason why so many Republicans are going out of their way to undermine American support for Ukraine. It's because they agree with Putin's anti-democracy cause and share his hopes that defeating Ukraine will demoralize pro-democracy forces around the world. Now, it's probably a good thing that so few maggot Republicans, including Trump himself, feel comfortable expressing direct support for Putin and direct opposition to Ukraine. It means it's still taboo, even in the GOP ranks, to be proudly fascist, much less openly supportive of war crimes. The pretense that maggot Republicans believe in democracy is still being maintained, even as it's obvious that they would prefer to get to the part of the story where President for life, they want Donald Trump as squatter for life and cancels all future elections. That's not going to happen. But indeed, I'm sure many of them don't exactly love Putin. He's increasingly unhinged and shows contempt for the lives of his own people, which is bad messaging for the authoritarian cause. The underlying premise of the maggot republicanism is that abandoning democracy in favor of a Trumpian autocracy will be beneficial for their tribe of white conservative Christians, even as it crushes everyone else under the boot. Now, Putin, however, is a living reminder of the dangers of putting a nation's fate in the hands of a power-mad sociopath, and how it can come back to haunt even his sycophants. That's why the maggot media prefers to prop up Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban as their authoritarian role model, and that way they can pretend it's just about limiting immigration and destroying higher education while ignoring the parts involving child murder and genocide. But as the Satanist dissembling shows, the Trumpist Republicans are now in a rhetorical tough spot even with their own party. Major GOP leaders like Senate Minority Leader Moscow Mitch have not only openly supported Ukraine, but have called on the U.S. to spend more time. Have basically they have not only basically they have to spend more on military aid to their country, and it's not because they have some great love of democracy, because they hate democracy anyway. It's because Putin's aggression is destabilizing the very world that made them rich and powerful, and they may not love power sharing with Democrats, but they fear more what unleashing someone like Putin even further would do to their own political future. That's where the GOP establishment differs from isolationist anti-Ukraine Republicans, who also happen to be the ones who make the most excuses for the January 6th Klan insurrection. And for the hardcore maggot Republicans, this fight is ideological. They're not worried about global stability so much as advancing the anti-democratic cause. And we suspect most of them dislike Ukraine for the same reason that the country's independence got under Putin's skin. And it's because the existence cuts across their cynical arguments against democracy. Now, like Putin, the maggot movement knows better than to argue against democracy on moral ground. Instead, the argument is one grounded in performative cynicism. And gosh damn, democracy sounds nice on paper, and it goes the reasoning, but in practice, it just can't work. The opponents of democracy will portray democracies as hopelessly corrupt or pathetically weak. And that's why, for instance, they are so dependent on the big lie, which has become an all-purpose tool to portray democracy in a bad light. And it's also why Trumpists will toggle back and forth between portraying Biden as an evil mastermind who stole the election, which he did not, and then arguing the man is too sleepy to handle basic leadership duties. And it may be contradictory and nonsensical, but it's about framing authoritarianism as a necessary evil and democracy as a pipe dream. Now, if Ukraine wins this, though, it undermines this nihilistic view and gives the democracy proponents worldwide a shot of morale. So even if maggot Republicans were indifferent to the nation prior to this invasion, now that it's become an international symbol, they're rooting for Ukraine's failure. Indeed, Foe isn't even trying to make its Ukraine rhetoric make sense, but the racist Tucker Carlson had Tara Reid, whose only claim to fame is a sexual assault allegation against Biden that was shown so strongly to conflict with real world and even basic geographic evidence, and to unspool wild conspiracy theories on Putin itself. Now, Reid is not a foreign policy expert or expert on anything really, but she was willing to spew gibberish to undermine the Ukrainian cause. And that's all that matters to the unsubtle fascist propagandists at Foe. The kitchen sink approach to the anti-Ukraine rhetoric really gives the game away, and there's no principled, much less coherent rationale. They're just throwing a bunch of spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. It's the rhetorical strategy of people who know they can't offer their real reasoning, so instead they flood the zone with noise to confuse people about what it is that they're trying to basically talk about here. And the reason maggot Republicans won't say what they're actually thinking is because they want the U.S. to pull support for Ukraine, and they want Ukraine to lose, because Ukrainian success would be a boost to democratic sentiment worldwide, and that would harm the war on democracy against the Trumpists that the Trumpists are raging at home. It's really no more complicated than that, no matter how many random talking points they generate by the hour. So if you like the video, you can give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, RBW King. You can also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out. Also, you can leave a comment, let me know what you think. If you want to support my work even further, you can donate to my Patreon link, which you can find in the About section of YouTube. And for just a little as a few bucks a video or a month, your donation can help go a long way, and thanks for listening.